Hello, Guitar Smarts fans. Before you check out this podcast, I want to make you aware of a cool new place where you can interact with other Guitar Smarts listeners. It's a Facebook group called the Guitar Geek Hangout. That's where we hang out and talk about all things guitar. So, if you like the Guitar Smarts podcast, come and chat with Kiran and myself over in the Guitar Geek Hangout on Facebook. Maybe check out some pre-podcast clips and even get involved in asking and answering lots of questions from the other page dwellers. Hope to see you there.
Thoroughly delighted in many ways and excited by the prospect of what you can get on the new guitar market in that price range.
And do we feel the same way about the second-hand market?
I feel like I'm about to have a moan in a minute.
Greetings. Welcome to episode number 9 of the Guitar Smarts podcast. Thank you so much for joining us once again. This week, Kiran and I have challenged each other with another tricky scenario. This time we each have £300 or about $420 for our US listeners to buy a gig-worthy guitar. The challenge doesn't stop there though. We have to each propose 2 options. Option 1 is we have to choose a brand new guitar. Option 2 is a second-hand guitar. We have to use the change left over to modify second-hand guitars to improve them. Now stick around for this one because we were both surprised by the same thing, which was basically that currently, at least here in the UK, the second-hand market isn't the gold mine it used to be for those with just a few £100 to spend. As always, come and like us on Facebook at facebook.com/guitarsmarts. Follow us on Instagram using the handle @guitar_smarts. Finally, wherever you listen to your podcast, remember to please click subscribe or follow so you don't miss another great show like this one. Let's get to it. Kiran, how are you doing anyway? You all right?
I'm in really good spirits today, mate. It's Friday as always, which is a pleasure because we have to chat to each other about guitars, which is never a chore. And the sun has decided to make an appearance today and is shining through the window into my guitar room stroke COVID working office. So
yeah, exactly.
I'm in a good mood today, mate.
It's that time of the week where I get to look at all the guitars on the back room wall in your in your office and go, that's nice. That one's nice. I remember that one. The Variax is every guitar.
It's every guitar. Yeah, I love the way you opened our phone call before we started actually recording, where you just went, right, I'm checking. Is there any more guitars? So there isn't this week, but there might be after this challenge that we've set ourselves. Because I tell you what, it's made me think again about this dream guitar that I've got on order and whether I should be pressing the button on that when they call me to tell me it's arrived in. And it's really made me relook at what there is on the market and the quality of what there is on the market at the kind of lower end of the price range, which used to be associated with cheap stuff that wouldn't really last that long or play that well. But I tell you what, having done this challenge this week that you've set us, I'm thinking differently. I'm thinking very, very differently.
I'm astonished at what is available for £300. And I'm also astonished at something else, which I know we'll get on to later.
I've gone into grumpy old man mode this week, which I mean happens a lot anyway, but very rarely when it's to do with guitars. That's my happy place. But yeah, I've had a bit of a revelation this week. So should we talk about what the challenge was that you set?
Let's do the challenge. So this is the £300 gigging guitar challenge, right? You've just had a tax rebate to the tune of $4,500. Brilliant, right? That's custom shop guitar money. But unfortunately, car needs an MOT. Your lounge needed new carpets. There was a water leak under the orangery, and after all that's fixed, the family holiday is booked. You've got £300 left to spend on a new guitar.
It couldn't be more true.
It couldn't be more true. Yeah.
I have a group of musician mates, most of whom are guitarists, some are drummers, but we let them on the group. And there was text going backwards and forwards this morning about guitars that people were looking at and wanting to buy, and the whole thread of conversation ended when everyone just went, I've just had to spend £800 on fixing a damp in the walls, or I've just had a burst water main that cost me £400. That was a guitar. So actually, this is very much the balance of life at the moment. All of the guitars we could have bought if we didn't have to kind of maintain a house.
I think so many people relate to this, right? But for your £300, we've chosen 2 possible routes, right? So this is the challenge. So we've got to find a choice and maybe a couple of honourable mentions for the guitar that we would buy for £300, a gigging instrument, something that you could rely on to gig. And the other option, number 2, is buy something secondhand and spend the change that you have out of your £300 on making some upgrades to improve it. Okay, so that's the challenge. 300 quid on a new guitar.
I think it's a really good challenge.
It's tough, isn't it?
Well, I'll tell you what, there's been a couple of revelations doing this for me, which we'll go through as we go through the process, and we will get into the guitars. But I think this is a very realistic challenge for a lot of people, either for beginners making their journey into kind of electric guitar and thinking, right, how much money do I need to spend to get myself a decent guitar that's gonna be worth owning for a while and is going to play nicely. And £300, I think, is a nice amount of money for a beginner to spend on a guitar. What I have learned through this process is you can get some actually very promising looking guitars for a lot less than that, which I had no idea you could start to pick up guitars for, less than £100. I think that's quite a nice, interesting price point. I think it's quite a challenging price point as well, because I think if you spend like another £100 more, then you start to get into the kind of more mid-rangey kind of intermediate level, which again, there's a whole more range of choice in there. So I think £300 is the right cutoff. We keep talking about pounds. We've got a lot of listeners in the US as well, so we should kind of try and make that relevant in dollars as well. So we're probably talking about $400.
Yeah, something like that. I think that's about right.
About that kind of price range. So I think it's a good challenge, but I think it's also a good conundrum, which is, not just for the beginner, but also for the gigging guitarist who might want to buy another guitar to have on the rack at a gig, in case of backup or whatever. That's a nice amount of money to have as your kind of second spare guitar or third spare guitar that you take out on a gig or something like that in case you break a string or whatever. And the conundrum is also, well, do I go and use that money to buy something brand new, or can I get something really decent and save a bit of cash and get something used and potentially even upgrade some of the parts of it? So I think that's a nice little dilemma that we could shed some light on as to what route to go down. Do you go new, or do you actually get a better bang for your buck going used and secondhand? And I certainly went into this challenge with a preconception around I was going to get a lot more for my money going secondhand and then modding it and putting some different bits into it. But I think through this process of doing a bit of research on this, I've had my mind changed a little bit.
I agree entirely. That's almost exactly how I feel about it. I'm actually quite shocked at the second-hand market. I thought it would be a fertile ground, for exactly what you said, finding something at a really good price. But I think there's clearly some misplaced expectations from people who are selling their guitars secondhand on what they're worth, and that makes it quite difficult with £300 or your $400 to actually. Well, actually, I don't know if it's the same, obviously, in different parts of the world, but certainly where we are here in the UK, it seems like the second-hand market in that range, at least, is. Not filled with choices.
So we'll get on to that, and I agree with you. I think we've both because we did this research separately, right? And we're coming together right now to discuss what we've individually found during the course of the week. So we haven't really chatted about it during the week. We've just had the challenge, and I'm competitive, so I was like, I'm going to find a better guitar than Matt for the money and all of that. But actually, the competitive bit's gone, and I think this has gone a lot more philosophical in terms of the UK used market and what's happening in the new market, which I think is quite interesting. But I'd love to hear from our kind of listeners around what their thoughts are around this and any bargains that they've picked up, either new or secondhand and used. And I'd love to hear from the folks in the US as well, or indeed in other countries in Europe, around what their used guitar market is like, because the things that we're going to talk about for certainly what's going on in the UK market at this price point, I think was quite an insight and quite a point of concern for me. So anyway.
Yes, and we should say as well, because obviously we're doing an audio podcast here, right? But we're going to be talking about things we're looking at the same time. So if you're listening to this, head over to the Facebook page or the Instagram page, and you'll be able to see some pictures and some screenshots of exactly the instruments that we're talking about. And then you can get an idea.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to show you some of the pictures of stuff that I've found, and then you're going to talk me through some of your stuff. But we'll try and make reference to model numbers and websites we found these on, and put them on our social media so people can see. Because I think there's some great things out there that we found, which is going to be useful for people looking for their next reasonably moderate purchase.
Yeah, and I'm excited about this because I've got to say, I think I may have got a little bit attached to the guitars I've chosen. Certainly, I think they're great choices. So I'm pretty certain that I'm justified in making these selections.
I almost bought one of these this morning.
Seriously?
Yeah. I really almost did.
Oh, this is a dangerous challenge.
I was just like, oh man, I'm going to kill you for saying this challenge. It's just cost me money. But honestly, yeah, I've just, in the process, I found a guitar. I'm like, that looks amazing.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's get stuck into it.
Let's get to it. Do you want to go first?
Yeah, all right. I'm happy to go first.
So you go first. Let's look at, first of all, number one. We'll look at our £300 brand new off the shelf guitars.
Yeah.
So sorry to interrupt this super interesting conversation. However, if you've made it this far, you should probably subscribe to the Guitar Smarts podcast. You can do that in your favourite podcast app. Go and do that now, and then come back to the show. Let's get back to it.
What I did is I tended to go up to the maximum of the budget, right? Working on a general principle that, you know, within this price bracket, the more you spend, the better guitar you are generally going to get. There's definitely a point of diminishing returns with, you know, how much you spend on a guitar and then how much incrementally better it is. But I don't think we're playing at the moment with this challenge in the realms of diminishing returns. So I've tried to see, okay, up to that £300, $400 mark, what can I get up to the top end of that range? But there were a few things that came in where I was like, wow, actually, you know what? These are really worth mentioning because they're actually not at the top end of this budget and they are fantastic. So I'm going to go to the brands that people will recognize. First of all, Epiphone, fairly obvious kind of starting point for a well-known, well-made instrument that kind of sits in that price range. Now, Epiphone Les Pauls, which are very popular. The kind of standard versions of those are actually out of this price bracket by maybe 50, 60 pounds. But what you can get is like the kind of Epiphone Les Paul specials, and there's a lovely one here that's going for 160 pounds, like less than $200, brand new, 2 humbuckers, 3-way switch. You know, that is a cool guitar for not a lot of money, brand new. It's available in a bunch of different finishes, and also Epiphone do a really reasonable version of that Epiphone Les Paul special, but it's actually the kind of slash copy of his Appetite for Destruction type Les Paul.
I've heard good things about that.
I have.
Yeah. For such a cheap guitar, I've heard good things about that. A lot of, you go on kind of the Epiphone fan pages and things, and there's some guys that have got those that say they're fantastic guitars.
I've heard the same, but they are, and the price point of that is £220 brand new, and that comes with gig bags and straps and all kinds of other bump with it. So I mean that's $250. That's a lot of guitar for the money, especially if you're a fan of Slash, and even if you're not, it's a pretty cool looking guitar. You know, zebra humbuckers. That's looking pretty special. So I think in the Epiphone range, you can get yourself a stripped down Les Paul special, or even this kind of AFD slash kind of Epiphone. I think the brand name itself is well known with kind of good quality. You're not going to get things like the kind of Epiphone 335s or dots that they do, which is their version of it. You're not really going to get a kind of standard Les Paul for that kind of money, at least as far as I could find. But I think that's a good kind of starting point for anyone that's into kind of Les Paul single cut style guitars. But on that note, that's the kind of Epiphone stripped down version. What I also found from Thomann, which is a huge guitar distributor in the UK, but I believe they ship worldwide now. And particularly if you're into the kind of single cut Les Paul style things, is the Harley Benton guitars, which I've mentioned before because I bought one of the kind of PRS versions that Harley Benton do. But this one here, this is a full-on, full-fat Les Paul copy by Harley Benton. So not the kind of stripped-down version that Epiphone do. This is the Harley Benton kind of version of a Gibson Les Paul, and it's the SC550. And again, this is done in that what they call the Paradise amber flame, which for anyone that's a fan of GNR and Slash, they'll know that this is a kind of direct copy of his Chris Derrig Gibson copy, right? We're not going to go down. No. Yeah, we're not going to go into that rabbit hole today. Yeah. So anyway, that is a lot of guitar for the money, because I actually own the vintage branded version of this guitar, but they're identical. They're made in the same factory by the same people, and they've got all the same components on it.
It's but the vintage, just the name on the headstock.
Yeah, it's just the name on the headstock. The vintage branded version, because Vintage is a guitar brand here in the UK. I'm pretty sure it's worldwide as well. But the vintage one, I bought for about another £100, $150 on top of this, and it's identical, and it's a great guitar. I think it's a brilliant guitar for the money, and I've used it as a second guitar for gigging and stuff like that. So yeah, that's kind of the Les Paul market covered. So that's 195 quid, Matt. That's like, you know, that's 2/3 of the budget that we set ourselves.
It's crazy, isn't it? If you're savvy enough, you can get you can get quite a few guitars, 300 quid.
So I mean, I was quite pleasantly surprised with that, and I know how good this guitar is, the Harley Benton. That's a lot of guitar for the money there, for 195 quid, a full fat Les Paul. It doesn't say Gibson on the head, so it doesn't say Epiphone, but I guarantee you that, you know, those Harley Bentons, that SC 550, that is a lot of guitar for somebody looking for a Les Paul.
It's a stunning guitar. It looks beautiful.
And I've got a version of it, and the pickups are decent. I bought it as a guitar to mod, but I haven't modded anything on it because it's actually really good. Also, just briefly kind of talk about the other Harley Benton things that I found, because I mean, this guitar manufacturer is just producing some phenomenal guitars at ridiculous price points. So.
Now, I've got to add in here quickly, just to give anybody an idea about the range of stuff that Harley Benton do. I looked at Harley Benton too, right? I went on to Man, and I just put in electric guitars. I selected Harley Benton as the brand, and I sorted it from the cheapest product upwards, right? I think the cheapest one's like a kid's guitar that starts about 40 odd quid, okay? About $60, whatever. But do you know how it kind of lists maybe 20 guitars, and then you go to page 2, 20 guitars? Yeah. I got up to, I think, page 7 before it was even adding up to about £150. So we're talking maybe, I was looking through more than 100 different guitars from Harley Benton before we were even halfway up the price range that we set ourselves. It's just an insane amount of choice out from these guys. It's unbelievable.
It's exciting because I've got a couple of these guitars, and I didn't expect them to be as good as they are. I mean, okay, they're not a premium guitar. They're not, you know, something that you're going to say is, you know, your dream guitar. But, you know, that's fine. There's plenty more space on the wall for your dream guitar, and that kind of is, you know, for another day. What we're talking about, just, you know, for this challenge in particular, is, you know, stuff for beginners or intermediate players, or even pros that want to have a second, third guitar to lug around, or just have got a bit of cash, as you said in your challenge. You've just been given it, you know, you got a bit of cash back from the tax man, and you want to have a bit of fun with the guitar. This is a really safe way to do it and get something decent that you will actually enjoy playing. So I was playing guitar last night, and I picked up one of the Harley Bentons of all the, you know, dozens and more than dozens of guitars sitting behind me. But I had a jam on the Harley Benton, and it was this one. It's the CST-24, which is their double cutaway PRS style guitar. Now, I've played real PRSs and set up real PRSs, and they are beautiful instruments. They're just stunning in every way. This is not, you know, if you put them side by side, of course, it's not a real PRS, and its shortcomings will soon be evident. But if you don't put them side by side and you just take it on face value for what it is, it's a pretty guitar that's really decently made, reasonably finished. Give it a good setup, and you can have a lot of fun on it and feel very smug with yourself that you've spent, you know, what you'd probably spend on a meal out and a few drinks out in London. It's a great guitar. And as you say, Matt, you go on that Toman website and look up Harley Benton guitars, and you can find everything. Their versions of kind of Tellys, Strats. You'll even get a 335 style guitar, semi-hollow guitars, archtop stuff, everything. They've got versions of everything, and they are inexpensive.
They've even got a telly that kind of looks like Prince's telly. You remember, that telly had that kind of natural finish with, I think it was a Hohner Telecaster he had.
The mind boggles. So look, Harley Benton, and I know some people are going to be snobby about the name on the headstock, and you know what? For a number of years, I was. So in order to satisfy my snobbishness, I went out and bought all of the expensive guitars with the names on the headstock. And you know what? Here's an insight: it doesn't make you happier, and it makes you realize that actually they're great guitars and they're lovely to own, but you can still get cheap guitars and still have as much fun on them. So
exactly. The enjoyment I get and satisfaction from playing guitar or performing relies nothing on the kudos of other guitarists. If another guitarist thinks, he's playing a cheap Harley Benton, I don't care. It's, I'm enjoying myself. That's what matters.
Exactly. I love turning up to a gig or a jam night with a no-name brand guitar or a cheap guitar, and it's fine. And people are like, "Oh, look, have you seen my Gibson Les Paul or whatever?" And I don't want to say to them, "Yeah, I've got some of them at home," because I go, "Well, why didn't you bring that? Why aren't you playing that?" So, well, I do, but this is a lot of fun, and it's cheap and it's inexpensive, so I don't mind taking it out. And anyway, we've talked about that before. So I want to hand over to you in a minute, but just before I do, Matt, I want to call out one particular manufacturer who I think deserves special commendation, right? And at this price point, and that is Ibanez. I've always been a fan of Ibanez guitars. I've set up a bunch of them in my time for people. One of my best friends is a real Steve Vai fan, and he's got a beautiful gem Ibanez, and I've set that up from a couple of times and played it, and it's stunning, right? But I've never really owned one myself, and I'm more kind of traditional in my guitar choices. I think they deserve a special mention because at this price range, some of the stuff that Ibanez is producing is frankly stunning for the price, and you're getting that name on the headstock. Every Ibanez that I've ever played or set up for a customer, I've been impressed with in terms of build quality and finish for the price of it. And they, again, have got a huge range of guitars underneath that price point that we're talking about that I would not have any kind of embarrassment or issues owning and playing, and I think are fantastic. So that was an eye-opener for me, because I don't normally follow the Ibanez guitars as closely as I do as others, but I tell you what, I'm going to start doing that now. And my actual choice for what I would buy brand new is an Ibanez. It is the Ibanez SA260 FM TGB, which is the longest guitar name in the world.
Snappy. What can I say?
It's snappy. So the TGB basically stands for transparent grey burst. Okay, so we can get rid of that. It's a grey flamed maple top. It's probably a very thick veneer rather than a kind of full maple cap, I would imagine. But that's all right. It looks very beautiful. It is that Ibanez style. It's not quite. Doesn't quite look like a gem. It kind of looks a bit more like the kind of Satriani type Ibanez. I mean, Google it, people. Look it up. I tell you what, this is right. This is actually over the budget in terms of recommended retail price. This retails for around £350, about $400, $420, something like that. But I managed to find a couple of online sellers that are doing it on a deal. So I found one that was doing it for £291 and one that was doing it for £299. So I've got it under budget. And I tell you what, I'm blown away by the look of this thing.
It's beautiful.
It's stunning.
Yeah.
It's absolutely stunning. It's really kind of thin, lightweight, but you've got the Ibanez quality. It's got a beautiful satin finished neck on it, a really nice kind of synchronized trem. You've got a humbucker at the bridge, and then two single coils, so you've got a lot of different tonal versatility there. And the more I looked into this guitar, the more I was just thinking, actually, look, for less than £300, this is a stunning piece of kit that I think actually a beginner would be delighted with, but any intermediate or even pro would have a lot of fun on this guitar. It's proper Ibanez for really not a lot of money for the amount of guitar that you're getting. And I honestly came within within an inch of buying one of these this morning.
Is this the one you nearly bought?
Yeah. And do you know what, Matt? I might buy it by the end of today. Because do you know what? I've got this guitar on order, the Dream guitar on order. I'm kind of like, should I pull the trigger on that one? And is it too extravagant? Whatever. I'm still not going to tell you what it is until it arrives. But what I will tell you is I could have 9 of these for that one. And when you put it like that, you go, well, that's just stupid, isn't it? Because that's not 9 times, better. I don't think it will be than this.
This is a fantastic choice. And do you know what? You've picked something as well that isn't just of and by itself clearly a great guitar, but going back to the original premise of what we were trying to do, of trying to find a gigging guitar, something that in my mind is, it's the second guitar you might take to a gig. And you've picked something that's super versatile. It's got a proper trem. You've got, single coil humbucker there as well. So you're a bit of a rock monster, but good for all genres. Even just objectively speaking, that's a lot of bang for the buck.
That's what I thought, and for me, Ibanez was a standout mention in this list. I think we're all kind of getting to know brands like Vintage and brands like Harley Benton that are offering something quite staggering for the price point. And we've all known Epiphones are reasonable. There's other definitely notable mentions which I know you'll probably get onto, so I won't kind of ruin what you've got coming up, because there are other brands that we could mention that I was surprised by. But for me, this was the standout brand that I thought, actually, you know what, Ibanez, good on you. You are producing some really sensational, versatile guitars that aren't just, for Steve Vai fans at a reasonable price point, and to the point where I think this SA260 FM is gonna be on my mind and may even get purchased.
It's on your mind. It might be on your wall tomorrow.
Let's find out what happens next week.
Well, congratulations, because that is a fantastic choice, but also commiserations, because I definitely think I've beaten you on this one.
Oh, I'm intrigued. All right, buddy. Cool.
Well, no, I don't know. And it's all subjective.
You know what? I hope you have, and I mean that in all sincerity, because I'm so damn excited about what we found on this, that if you found something else that's even better, I'm just, this challenge will have been worth it as a kind of validation on what guitar manufacturers are doing at the moment. That is exciting for people that have been.
We've both learned something doing this, haven't we?
Yeah.
This is the great thing. Right, on to my choices. Are you excited?
I really genuinely am, mate. Because, not only because of what you might have found, but it's also good to know what you think about the market and what got you excited. Because although we love our guitars, right, we don't necessarily like the same thing, but we kind of have good fun talking about the pros and cons of it. So I'm really interested to see how you would spend your money in this bracket.
You made a good point there about Ibanez being a real player in this bracket amongst other people. But do you know what? The biggest thing I realised was that for 300 quid, between a select number of manufacturers, every genre is covered. There are archtop guitars, semi-acoustic guitars. Ibanez has got some serious rock machines in there as well. Metal guitars as well with active pickups. Ibanez have got this Artcore series, which are great for, the blues and jazzier side of things. There's just some, I don't think whatever genre of music you're into, you're covered if you've got 300 quid. In getting, and that I found astounding. That back when I was learning guitar when I was 13 years old, you couldn't get the range of guitars that you can get now for a few hundred quid, and I think it's just fantastic that there's so many options around. It does make you wonder: do you need to spend more than 300 quid on a guitar? Really, 500 quid, $600-700 above that, you're really satisfying your own desires, aren't you? More than getting something you really need. It seems that way, when you look at the market. But anyway, right, here we go. Are you ready? I've gone for. Hey there, listener. I'm just going to stop you there. Maybe you've got a few questions for us about the podcast, or even anything guitar related at all. Well, if you come on over to our Facebook page or Instagram page and comment or message us there, we will answer your question in a future podcast. You know where to find us. It's facebook.com/guitarsmarts or at guitar_smarts on Instagram. Let's get back to it. I've gone for a Yamaha Pacifica 212 VFM. Again, another really snappy model number. Electric guitar in caramel brown. And I found this at an online retail for about 299 quid. But again, like your choice, I think its recommended retail price is above that. But this is a pretty sexy guitar.
It's a good-looking guitar, isn't it?
Exactly.
Tell people about the spec.
So the spec on this is pretty good, right? I think this is a older body maple neck rosewood board, flamed maple veneer top, and it's a flamed maple veneer headstock as well, which is kind of cool. It's got that custom shop vibe, right? That's what Yamaha say on the website. It's aimed at that kind of classic California custom shop session guitarist vibe, right? And that's why that model range is called the Pacifica anyway. It's meant to be like the LA session scene guitarists that had in the 80s that would have like the Tom Anderson guitars that were very much the sleek kind of hot rodded Strat kind of guitars. It's a humbucker single coil pickup again combination with a coil tap on the humbucker. So again, super versatile instrument, really good quality hardware. Something I've found which I thought would be useful. It's got headstock access to the truss rod, right? Which to my kind of that was important to me at the time of looking for this, because I've just recently made some adjustments to my Strat and had to loosen the neck off to get to the truss rod. That's such a silly design
it
thing.
Really
but anyway.
is. So when you texted me when you were adjusting your truss rod, I had a grin on my face because it's when you start doing that you reach the point when you buy future guitars that becomes a prerequisite to have the truss rod adjustment on the headstock. Yeah. Because God bless Leo Fender, he made some beautiful instruments, but if it was his idea on some of those instruments to put the truss rod adjustment on the neck heel, it's just such a pain. So, the fact that you're delighted now that it's got truss rod adjustment pleases me.
Interestingly, about the spec on this, it's got a Strat scale length, which again, that's a practical decision from my part because I play a Strat most of the time, and it's got a relatively flat fingerboard radius. I think it's a 13 3/4 inch radius fingerboard, which I think is pretty flat.
That is pretty flat. So for those people that don't know about fingerboard radius, I'm sure a lot of our listeners do, but if you don't worry. We'll cover that in future episodes. But it's basically kind of talks about how flat or how rounded, in very basic, simplistic terms, the fingerboard is, and therefore hence the frets are, and then in turn the kind of curvature that the strings take over the surface of the fretboard. And it's kind of generally considered that the more rounder the kind of fingerboard radius is, it's more comfortable for kind of chord playing, and the flatter it is, these are generalizations, right? The flatter it is, so you kind of 10 to 12 kind of radius that you get on kind of Les Paul type guitars, which are a bit more flatter than Strats, which have a kind of 7 to kind of 9.5 type radius, is generally considered more comfortable for string bending and faster playing. And then you get into the like ultra modern guitars like some of the Ibanez's and stuff like that, which can have up to like a 14 inch radius, which is super flat. So 13 on this is a flat board, which might be really nice for kind of string bending and potentially fast.
And I guess that allows you to have, I guess, on a fingerboard that has a smaller radius, so it's more curved. That means bending can be more difficult, and therefore you have to allow a higher action. Is that right? If you do a lot of bending, whereas a flatter fingerboard, you can have a lower action with less problematic kind of areas on the board for bending and things. Is that right?
This is the theory, mate. This is the theory. But you know what? There's a lot more to it than that. I mean, without going down a kind of rabbit hole with this one, look at the PRS Silver Sky that just came out, right? That's got a 7.25 inch radius on it, right? Which is like the old traditional vintage Fender kind of radius, right? And you go, well, hold on a minute. Does that mean I'm not going to get a low action on my beautiful John Mayer kind of signature Silver Sky, and it's not going to be good for string bending or low action? And you play one of those that's been decently set up, and you go, oh. That's just blown that myth out of the water, isn't it? So there's a bit more to it than that. But as a generalization, as a safe generalization, what you're saying is absolutely correct.
Cool. So that was something that I thought was relatively important in having a backup guitar. I was thinking, well, that plays into my hands as wanting something that's easily playable, so I can pick out of the bag if I need to, last minute, and just, not feel like I have to spend a few minutes getting used to it too much, But the reasons for choosing this weren't just around the budget and liking it. One was I have previous experience with a Pacifica. I used to own one, and they're fantastic guitars for the money. And also, Yamaha's a big brand. They are, people forget about them, but they are another big musical instrument brand, and there's a lot of weight behind that brand. So I kind of thought, I'm going with somebody I can trust here as well for my money. And it's it's a sexy guitar, and it's properly versatile. And I thought that is, I think, 300 quid, 400 bucks, well spent.
I'm delighted that you've chosen that, mate. I did see the Pacificas in my search, and it made me think of you and your first kind of guitar that you had. And I'll be honest, because I haven't been looking so much at this price point for a little while, other than the Harley Benton stuff. I hadn't realised that they were producing such a vast range of Pacificas now, with all these different kinds of specs, and some of them, like the one you've just called out, really exciting piece of kit, really versatile. It's going to be well made.
I love the smaller pick guard on this as well, because if the normal strap pick guard's a t-shirt, this is a bikini. It's that kind of thing.
It really is. I hadn't realised that until you mentioned it. But
exactly, it's kind of like
little pick guard.
Exactly. I think it's just a fantastic looking guitar. Anyway, I'm going to move on to my choice number 2, and this will make you laugh because it's another Pacifica.
Got P90s on it.
It's exactly this was almost my number 1 choice. I've got to say, this was number 1 until I spotted the other one, but. This is less. The reason I didn't choose this is just honourable mention number 1, and there's 2 kind of honourable mentions. But the reason I didn't choose this is slightly less versatile. But I don't think I've ever seen another guitar. And actually, I should say this is the Yamaha Pacifica 311H, right? So this is in vintage white, slightly different model than the previous one. Same shape. Mostly the same spec, rosewood board, maple neck, alder body. No flamed finish or anything like that. But instead of this kind of versatile single coil humbucker with a coil tap, this is a P90 in the neck and a humbucker in the bridge, which I don't know if I know of any other guitars that have that combination. I mean, it's a pretty gnarly pickup combination to have, but it doesn't have a tremolo. It's a hardtail bridge system on this guitar, but it does have coil tap on the humbucker again. So I thought that's actually a really nice looking guitar. And that comes in just a little bit under the 300 budget as well, 275. You're kind of seeing that.
It's a cool guitar. I love a P90 in a guitar. There is something really cool and kind of compressed and squishy about the sound of a P90, but also it's got some growl and some bite to it. Why would you recommend this to somebody or in what situation would you say to somebody, because you've chosen 2 Pacificas, you may have even chosen 3 when we get to your next. In fact, Matt, is it all just Pacificas? No, this is not a product placement. This is not Yamaha have not contacted me, to do this. Well, if someone said to you, okay, Matt, well, you've got 2 Pacificas there, very different specs and setup. Which one should I choose? Which one would I go for?
That's a really good question that I don't know the answer to. So what I would say is, I think the second one, the 311H, which is the one with the P90 and the humbucker, that's a good option for somebody who's looking for that. This is a good thing for a different vibe around the standard kind of realm of what guitarists usually pick. It's something different, something with different sounds. I don't even know what it would likely sound like, to be perfectly honest. It's not going to sound like a Strat. It's not going to sound like a Les Paul. The other choice, the one that I made my first choice, which is a bit more of a standard kind of vibe, it's more Stratty with the humbucker in the bridge. That's what I would say to somebody, This is going to cover all the bases for you. This is going to allow you to get a lot of different sounds, either as, a guitarist who needs a backup guitar that they can rely on for anything, whether you're doing a jazz gig or a rock gig or anything like that. This is what I would say is the most versatile. So, but if you're looking for, hey, I've got a lot of guitars, I want something a bit different, then the 311H was the choice. There was one more honourable mention, which I'll just quickly go over, but this will make you laugh. It's not a Pacifica. Right, it's a Harley Benton. It's a Harley Benton, good old Harley Benton. And I literally went onto the website and kind of did the opposite thing. Budget was 300 quid, and I listed it price descending, so I'd get the most expensive thing first. And this, again, it doesn't really kind of tick any boxes for me. I don't feel anything about this guitar, but I put it on there because I thought this is the most guitar for the money I think I saw.
Yes.
Anyway,
it absolutely is. I saw this one, and do you know what? I just sent a picture of this to a friend this morning, this exact guitar, because he sent me a picture of what he was currently lusting after, which was this Charvel version of this. It looks identical to this. And it's also then a version of that Charvel is in turn a version of the Guthrie Govan signature guitar that he really likes. He's a huge Guthrie fan. So, and I sent him a picture of this and went, go and buy this from Harley Benton and save yourself hundreds. I mean, it was done in jest, right? Because, his dream guitar is the Guthrie one, which is like three grand's worth of guitar. So let's be honest, it's not the same. But I tell you what, when you look at the specs of this, it's a lot of guitar for the money.
It's some serious spec on this guitar. It's the Harley Benton Fusion 2 HSH, which means humbucker, single coil humbucker, roasted FNT set. So it's got a set neck, and it's got a Sapel body, maple flame veneer, maple neck, roasted maple fretboard on a guitar, sub 300 smackaroos, Graph Tech nut, natural wood binding, coil tapping humbuckers, Wilkinson trem, locking machine heads, comes with a gig bag. For 300 quid, that's just a serious guitar. It's basically the only decision you got to make is, do you care about what's written on the headstock? And we had that discussion before. That's a personal thing, right? But this was a very sterile decision. I thought, I've got to put this on my list because of how much of a guitar it is for the money. But it's not my kind of guitar, but it's an incredible amount of guitar for 300 notes.
Do you know what, mate? I had the exact same kind of thing. It doesn't evoke any particular feelings in me when I look at it, like some of the other guitars that we've spoken about do. Like that Ibanez that I mentioned that I came close to buying this morning. When I look at that, I just go, wow, I want to pick that up and play it. That looks awesome. This Harley Benton model doesn't really do that for me. But if you think about what you're getting for the money and the spec of it, and I've heard on the forums and things that people are going crazy for this guitar and that it plays like a dream. And to some people, they'll look at it and go, it's amazing. Then it's a lot of guitar for the money. So I think we've been thoroughly delighted in many ways and excited by the prospect of what you can get on the new guitar market in that price range.
And do we feel the same way about the second-hand market?
I feel like I'm about to have a moan in a minute.
What's the problem? What's the problem with the second-hand market right now?
I think we have to blame Joe Bonamassa. No, I'm joking. Right, so how do I get from the UK guitar market, sub £300 guitars, and my confusion with it to Joe Bonamassa? I don't know if these things are linked. I'm pretty certain they're not. But there is this mentality that seems to be creeping in, which is all guitars will appreciate or hold their value over time. And also wear and damage to a guitar is seen as acceptable because it's just kind of player grade versus it actually just being poorly treated.
Patina,
Yeah, I mean, come on, people. Let's be reasonable when we're describing guitars. If it's been played and there's a bit of buckle rash on the back and there's the odd little bit of finish, minor kind of wear here and there because it's sat on a guitar stand or rested on the floor or accidentally, caught the corner of a mic stand, of course, we're going to be like reasonable and go, well, that's a second-hand guitar. if it's got chunks of wood missing out of it, you can't, I'm sorry, you can't call it, player grade. It's like, that's damaged. That's just damaged.
I can't do that with my car. Can I? I can't add more. If I sell my car, if it's got a bump in the bonnet, and I can't add more onto it and say it's driver grade.
That's it. So why do I mention Joe Bonamassa? I'm a huge Bonamassa fan. What an incredible player, and I'm so envious of all the guitars. And I love his guitar philosophy and the fact that he plays these guitars and curates them. So I'm not having a dig at him. I think he's brilliant. But he obviously goes on a lot of guitar safaris, and he's obviously buying up these vintage instruments, as are a lot of other collectors and wealthy people like him. And I wonder if it's like that kind of domino effect all the way down the food chain that is then creating this mentality that because a 59 Les Paul sold for X amount in 1959, if you just keep hold of it, the longer you keep hold of it, you're going to have a $500,000 guitar in the decades to come. Now, obviously, we're not talking about that magnitude of kind of appreciation or increasing in prices. But what I saw on the used guitar market was people are still trying to get the same money or more money than they paid for these guitars a few years back. It's the same types of guitars that I saw when I was looking new, right? So I'm not getting a huge amount of access to more advanced, more expensive models at a reasonable price. I'm still, by and large, seeing the same types of guitars that I could buy brand new for a little bit extra money. But now what I've got is a guitar that is a few years old. It's got wear on it in some instances. But look, I'll show you an example of it if I can. So in some instances, you've got exactly the same guitar, a little bit cheaper, but with like bags of wear on it. So here's this guitar, right? This is an Ibanez. It's a slightly different model number, SAS 36 FM Flame Maple. It's in trans red. I saw that picture on the used market and I was like, wow, that's pretty much like the other Ibanez for all intents and purposes. It looks pretty much identical. This one's in trans red. It's a beautifully pretty guitar and it's £249, then plus another 20 quid postage. So, all right, I'm saving 30 quid, $40 off the brand new price. And then that's one picture there of the same guitar at the back. It's got a huge chunk missing out of it.
Yeah,
may have
exactly.
some wear and tear. Yeah, that's not wear and tear, that's just damage, right? And similarly here, look, here's a 2001 PRS Santana SE. And PRS Santana SE is a really nice budget guitar, and it's a great guitar to play. And yeah, it's a pretty reasonable price. But a new one isn't much more money than that, if anything. This one is 20 years old, and it's got loads of wear on it. And you just think, well, I'm not saving that much money at all. I did find some good clean examples of some guitars that I thought, actually, that is worth the money. I found an Epiphone Dot for about $300, which was pretty decent, really clean condition. I couldn't get one of those brand new in the price range. So whoever's selling that, I thought, that's decent. Good on you. That's I don't think they were that much money when they were brand new, or they certainly weren't going for that type of money on the used market a few years ago. So I think there's definitely something that's happened to the used market for those guitars. But hey ho, all right. I found again was some Strats, but we're still talking about the Fender Squire Affinity series. I'm not getting into the classic vibe on the used market in this price range yet. I'm not getting into the Mexican range of Strats. We're still talking Squire stuff here. And I found this 1996. Do we say that's vintage now? Maybe we do. I found this vintage Fender Squire 50th anniversary edition. It's got some extras on it. It is clean. It's super clean. It's been kept in somebody's loft. The metal on it's got a little bit of tarnishing, but that would come off if you wanted it to, or just leave it, and it looks quite nice. But the rest of it is decently clean. But that's still £240, right? And you can buy a brand new Affinity for about the same money. So, and here you go. This person here is living in a dream world, really. Epiphone electric guitar / AFD, 2018. So that's a few years old now. Includes gig bag for £215 plus £15 P&P. Well, you can buy a brand new one for less money with more extras, and it's exactly the same guitar. as somebody trying to meet this challenge, I was disappointed that I wasn't getting access to a better, more expensive range of guitars, but used, that I could then make that decision. It was the same types of guitars that I could buy new just for a little bit less money, but a lot more wear on them, which to my mind defeats the object of going onto the used market. And I'll finish my rant in a minute. The other thing that I realised is I'm also a massive hypocrite.
Why?
Because I'm doing exactly the same thing. I'm selling a guitar now on Facebook, and I have been for the last few weeks, and I've had dozens and dozens of offers on this guitar, and I've turned them all down because it's not the asking price that I'm asking. And I've realised I'm doing exactly the same thing I'm criticising these people about. So,
wow.
you know, I'm not. I don't think I'm as bad, right? But I'm definitely edging on that territory, and it's made me realise I need to do something with this guitar listing because I can't criticise other people for doing this and then take a similar track myself. So I'm selling a Epiphone Les Paul Classic. It's a 2003 model made in the Korean unsung factory. So there's a, you know, depending on what you believe, I personally do think this is true because I've owned a few of these. I personally think the Korean-made Epiphone Les Pauls had a something about them. I think the China-made ones are very good, but I think the Korean-made ones from that period are particularly special. And I've owned a few
mine's
of them.
Korean, and it's fantastic.
Yeah, I think the guitars coming out of that factory were very good. But you know, there's people that will say differently. But anyway, it is literally, I promise you, Matt, well, you know this about me anyway, and my OCD, it is beyond mint. This one has never been gigged. It's just been a collector piece. I've played it a few times. It's beautifully set up. It looks like the day it was bought. It is completely and utterly mint, unmodded, factory spec, you know, clean, absolutely mint condition. I paid £299 for it back in 2003, brand new, and I'm selling it for $350 on Facebook. And I thought, well, am I being a hypocrite now? I mean, the way I looked at it is I looked at what you could buy a brand new Les Paul for, 450 quid. And so I thought, well, I could offer somebody £100 saving on a brand new one. It's absolutely mint condition, but it is a used Epiphone guitar, and I'm putting it on for more than I bought it for. So I've kind of made a decision. I'm either going to relist it for less money than I paid for it, or exactly the same money that I paid for it. So knock another 50 quid off it, or I'm just going to take it off the listing and just keep it. I don't want to be contributing to this thing that I think is happening on the used guitar market here, which is just a disproportionate kind of value perception to what you can get on the new market, because the guitars that are coming out that are new are getting better and better and better and cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. And the used market is not keeping up in that way. And I think that's a worrying signal.
I think people are attributing value to the guitars based on things that don't actually add any value, right? They're making an assumption that because they've taken the Squire Strat and they've decided in their time as an owner that they wanted to make it look like some kind of relict guitar, that now they can sell it as some kind of custom Squire Strat, you know, with upgrades and things, you know, and I kind of think, well, it doesn't really work that way, you know. I don't think it does, at least. And actually, you know, the second part of our challenge, which was to kind of take the money instead and spend on another guitar and upgrade it, I got to the end of that process. I loved looking for the new guitars, and I felt like the other option was a chore, quite frankly. And in the end, what I did is I found an Epiphone Les Paul SL on eBay for about 100 quid. You know, it's the most basic guitar I think Epiphone have ever made. It was 2 single coil pickups, stop-tail bridge, poplar body, just really, really cheap. And I kind of thought, well, I could easily spend, and I did in kind of, you know, hypothetically spent a couple of £100. I thought, I'll upgrade all the electrics. I'll put a couple of new pickups in there as well. I'll upgrade some of the hardware, and I worked it all out. And then I thought, would I have a guitar that I desire and want to play at the end of it? And quite frankly, no, I don't think I would. And actually, I think the best thing to do is to not approach it the way I approached it, which is to try and save as much money as you can for the upgrades and try and get a cheap guitar and see if you can improve it. Is actually to just try and get as much guitar as you can for your money. And if you have some money left over, then maybe try and spend it on a setup with a good guitar technician who can make it as playable as it can be and clean it up and sort out any inherent issues that it might have. That's what I learned as well. And I agree with you entirely. I think the second-hand market I think there are some chances out there. That's not to say you're a chancer, by the way, with your Les Paul trying to sell that.
I guess the point that I'm kind of curious about is this notion that all guitars will appreciate in price over time. And it's a strange thing, because I think there's definitely certain guitars that are investment pieces that will do that, and popularity of certain brands and guitars, and if they're made anymore or discontinued and things like that all play into it and can definitely have that bearing, right? But I see this phenomenon increasingly. Not just in the price point that we're talking about, Matt. So I've been after a Gibson Les Paul Classic reissue, right? Because that was one of the dream guitars that I lusted after when I was a teenager, right? And back, we're talking 20 years ago, right? They used to retail for £999. I remember that. And they were significantly cheaper than the kind of the USA standard. Still a USA full-blooded Gibson, but it was the classic one with the open coil humbuckers. It had a plain top, which I love on a Les Paul, as well as the flamey ones. And it was less than £1,000 back then. And I think the standards were probably going for around £1,200 to £1,500 back then. So actually, when you look at Gibson's pricing now, inflation and things aside, they've actually kind of been fairly reasonable with their pricing. And nowadays you can buy the 50s standard Les Paul for around $2,000, £1,800, something like that. And you can buy a classic for a little bit less money than that. The traditionals, which I don't think they do anymore, but the traditionals were a great Les Paul. I've got a few of those, and I bought mine for £1,500 each, brand new, and they're stunning, full fat Les Pauls. They're great. Now, if you go on the used market and try and buy one of these 1960 reissue classics, which was just a factory-run guitar, it's not custom shop, it's nothing like that. They were 990 quid, something like that, 20 years ago. They're going for $2,000, and they've got a lot of wear on them, a lot of wear on. So to find a clean one, you're kind of struggling, and they're going for around £2,000 used. And I just go, well, is that a fair price for that Les Paul based on what you can buy with a new one now? And I don't know, it just makes me think that the used market is overinflated in a way that I don't think is a healthy thing for the guitar industry, but that's just my view on it.
Well, there we go. So that's, I think, I agree with you entirely, and I hope it gets better. I hope not everyone thinks that the guitar is unique and is worth more than it was originally purchased for, and that it's appreciating in value, and that actually there'll be some bargains on the second-hand market again at some point.
That's what it should be about, shouldn't it? It should be about finding some bargains on the second-hand market, because I think that will then generate, some real excitement and some real movement, and people will start, trading used gear a lot more frequently, and because that's an exciting thing to do for the used guitar market. And all it means is we've just got to, all of us, myself included, is not ask for silly money for a used guitar. When you look at the brand new market, see what's going on there, and price your used gear accordingly, and everyone will benefit from access to a range of different instruments. And I think I wouldn't even bother looking at the used market. It's too much hassle.
And that's the conclusion I come to as well. I would buy new. I would buy new rather than used market, because I don't think I'm going to get more on the used market than I can on the new market at the moment.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
There we go.
What a great challenge, mate. Thank you for setting that.
That was so much fun. And, thank you to Yamaha for that. I'm only joking. Sorry. No. That was great fun, buddy. And then I'm looking forward to another challenge at some point and another podcast. You take care, buddy.
Yeah, and you, mate. Lovely speaking to you today.
You too,
and
buddy.
Catch up with you soon. Cheers, Matt.
Absolutely. All the best, mate.
Bye, buddy.
Ta-da. Another interesting conversation. Hope you enjoyed it. Come back for more next week. To make sure you don't miss it, subscribe to this podcast on your favourite podcast app. You never miss a show. Follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/guitarsmarts. Like us on Instagram at guitar_smarts. Anyway, have a cracking week. Speak soon.